What's going on? Is Juice Audio, a channel where I talk about mixing, recording gear, and music production. So if you're into that kind of thing, subscribe down below. It really helps a small channel. So in the audio world, gear usually stays in its intended market, but this is one of those pieces of gear that is favored by the whole market. This is the RME ADI Pro. It's highly regarded in the studio, and it's also known as one of the best values for the home hi-fi space as well. So if you're here from the mixing, mastering, or hi-fi world, I will be talking about this piece of gear from all those perspectives. We'll also be talking about what's a DAC, what makes a DAC, and which version is best for you. With that out of the way, let's start by unboxing and talking about the specs. So what you get in the nicely packaged box is the unit, power supply, digital I/O outbreak cable, and this huge manual with all the measurements and details your heart desires. And trust me, you'll be needing this. This unit is packed with features. And finally, you get this handy dandy remote. So what is a DAC and why would you even need one? Basically, a DAC, a digital analog converter, transfers digital ones and zeros from your computer to an analog signal for your speakers. There are different technologies different companies use that decode the ones and zeros differently. Chips like these all process the data differently and all have different sound characteristics. So what's so different than your run-of-the-mill audio interface or headphone jack is that these dedicated DACs have a much higher quality conversion, and they give you a lot of information that was lost in a low quality conversion. So what you will audibly hear is more dynamics, faster transients, bigger sound stage, and less distortion and noise. It's basically giving you what the pure audio is and not adding any artifacts to it. The problem with normal audio interfaces is that when companies design these, most of the money is dedicated towards the preamps, and the monitoring is just an afterthought. So having a dedicated DAC lets you hear the music as it was recorded. So there are 4 different versions of this DAC. I have here the ADI Pro FSR. The sound quality is basically the same throughout the range, but when you buy these more expensive ones, they have a lot more ins and outs that will be required if you're doing mastering work with these. This unit has 2 outputs, XLR or 1/4 inch. It has a balanced headphone amp that we'll talk about later, and 2 inputs. It also has digital I/O such as ADAT in and out, as well as ADS and SPDIF. As far as conversion, it uses AKM chips, and they're known for their musicality and neutralness. It can play up to 32-bit 768 kilohertz. It can also play DSD, which is an extremely high quality sound file, like a sound file similar to FLAC or WAVE, if you're into that kind of thing. The headphone amp can power up to 1.5 watts of extremely clear audio. It can also take balanced cables if you have headphones that allow that. So this unit is known for being packed with features. But as an audio engineer, sometimes if there's something to tweak, we'll tweak it. And then we'll keep tweaking it and never be happy with it. So with that out of the way, the main features I actually care about and will use is the headphone crosstalk and the EQ. Everything else I personally could live without. If you mix on headphones or are moving towards solely using headphones, crosstalk is very important for real-world translation. Common problems are judging reverbs and effects. It sometimes can sound super wet in your ears, but after you listen through speakers, it is often very dry. Headphones only give you the left and right channel directly to your ears, but if you listen on speakers, both your ears are actually hearing both speakers. So crosstalk allows you to blend the channels together ever so slightly to give you a more realistic translation. I've noticed a lot of mastering engineers that mix on headphones and recommend headphones always say to get a headphone amp that has crosstalk, this feature. And I think that's why the Slate VSX headphones that have this on the plugin are doing so well and are super successful. The headphone amp on this is very transparent. It could power any headphones you throw at it, such as the infamous Bayer Dynamics. It brings the headphones to life, and the quality you hear is hard to forget. It's like you finally know how the headphones are meant to sound, and not using an amp or a DAC of this caliber is going to be doing them a disservice. The EQ on this unit is very transparent and accurate. It could help you eliminate sonar works for good and bake your EQ directly to this. The only one problem with this unit is that the menu system is very hard to navigate. I personally never read manuals, and I'm sure the general population doesn't, and this is one of those things you absolutely will not figure out without the manual. The manual is huge, but I will say it's justifiable because this unit is packed with so many features. Luckily, they give you a quick start guide that helps a lot for people like me. So it's kind of hard to describe the sound of a DAC because it affects something that not a lot of people can describe. People are used to judging what they hear based on frequency range, like, oh, that has a lot of bass, or that treble is really crispy. But DACs affect dynamics, transient response, noise performance, soundstage, and imaging. The common word people use to describe this is just better quality. A few years ago when I had my truck, I installed one of these DACs into the head unit, and just installing that DAC with the same amp and speakers gave an insane clarity and soundstage I've never heard before out of any speakers. And after showing that to a lot of people that I know, they all said they didn't know a quality of this caliber existed. So DACs really give you the last 10-20% of the audio that you're supposed to hear. People are used to hearing music and saying, okay, that's how the music sounds. But in reality, so much is lost in the conversion, getting the audio just out of your computer. I tested this unit with many different speakers in different spaces and compared it with many other DACs. I tested it with some hi-fi speakers, high-end and low-end studio monitors. I wanted to see what will draw the most out of this unit and hope that I could recommend this to someone who will benefit most from it. First, I compared it with my home studio audio interface, the RME ADI-2 I'm using now. Then I compared it to the Dangerous D-Box Plus and the Apollo 8XP. At Guild Records, a different studio I've worked at, they have the same setup I have here at my house, the Atom A7X, but they also have an Apollo 8XP. So listening between the two studios, I always noted how those ones sounded so much better even though they're the same speakers. And it ended up being the DAC and the Apollo 8XP giving it that better sound quality. At Embassy Records, we also have the Dangerous D-Box, and when I'm A-Bing them, the Apollo always came up on top from those two. I found that it had better bass and more sparkle on the clinical sounding ATCs. The little Audient compared to those just sounded dynamically flat, like it was limited in dynamic range. And it still sounds great, it sounds fine actually, until you know that there's something a lot better. The RME just had so much more transient snap and darker background on the ATCs. It made voices and instruments just have more clarity and presence in space. Details I never really paid attention to made themselves present. Everything had breadth and space around it, and it had its own spot in the mix. It just makes it so much more easy to mix a song when what you hear is exactly what was recorded. At home, more in the hi-fi consumer setting, I have been listening to this DAC with the Bucar 810s and the Kali Audio IN8s for a few weeks. Both of those speakers I'll be reviewing soon, so stay tuned. Through the Bucar 810s, it gave them a sound stage I've never quite heard before. Music just surrounds you, and like, you even hear bass from someone's voice, dead center and crystal clear. Check out this track from Burna Boy to see what I mean. Music with more fast percussion really shows you its strength and transient response. I listened to a lot of Afro pop and Afro beats while testing this, and when my brother, a music fanatic, listens to them, the first thing he said is, it's not often that anyone hears anything like this. The Kalis really benefited from this DAC in the department they kind of lacked in. I felt an octave of bass extension, and it made them the complete studio monitor, but to everything else it didn't really do much. I mean, they are a $400 studio monitor versus a $4,000 hi-fi speaker. A-Bing those speakers between the RME and the Audient, the first thing I noticed is that the Audient is so much less dynamic. It makes this interface sound dynamically flat and limited. Mastering engineers use this DAC in two ways, either just to monitor the audio or to use the AD to DA conversion. They send their audio out through the outputs on the back through all their high-end mastering gear, and it comes back in through the analog in. This imparts just a very, very subtle musical flavor or tone into the music that they're working on. And mastering engineers I see often usually have 3 or 4 DACs just to have a little different flavor for a different song. Mastering is really the art of subtlety, so subtle changes like this really add up to the bigger picture. For mixing, this unit might not fit your workflow unless you already have some RME gear you can link this to. This will give you a clear window into your mix through your speakers or headphones, but it doesn't have any outputs for secondary monitors that we all often use. Also, if you often record, this might be a hassle to switch from this to an audio interface constantly. So overall, I recommend this to hi-fi listeners, mastering engineers, and mixing engineers, but recording engineers might have a problem with this, unless they can get this to integrate into their system seamlessly. Only mastering engineers will benefit from the AD to DA conversion on this unit. So if you're not doing that, just get the DAC version of this. It's $1,000 cheaper and it sounds basically the same. This unit costs $2,500, so it's pretty expensive, but compared to other mastering A to D to A converters, it's pretty reasonable. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like the content. Don't forget to leave a comment down below if you have any questions, and cheers.